Far Cry Primal takes an interesting change for the Far Cry series. For the most part, most of the gameplay formula is partially if not exactly the same, but the setting is completely different, making the game feel new. Far Cry Primal takes place in the year 10,000 BC, thousands of years before Voss asked you for the definition of insanity. The linear storyline of previous Far Cry entries isn't found here. This time around you play as a Stone Age hunter named Takar from the Wenha tribe. As Takar, you find yourself building up a new Wenha village while trying to find your lost brothers. Throughout your exploration, you'll discover the identity of two other tribes that'll rise up political tension between you and the other tribes, creating new conflicts. It's a really simple plot that doesn't get any real depth throughout the story. The secondary cast of characters are really interesting whenever they're actually present in cutscenes or in events, but aside from a portrait icon in the menus and a few character cutscenes, you don't really learn much about your main protagonist that you're playing as, making him one of the least engaging protagonists in the Far Cry series, and the same thing goes for the main antagonist. The new setting opens up a world that is rarely seen in other video games, and that aesthetic is awesome. However, the setting isn't just an aesthetic thing, it pretty much is the main driver behind this game. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because it lets you explore a new world that's rarely seen or created, but also limits the gameplay to certain realities. You're playing a game that essentially takes place in the Stone Age. There aren't any fancy guns or explosives, as none of them exist just yet. Instead, you're limited to three basic weapons that the Neanderthals at the time had: the bow and arrow for long-distance combat, the club for melee attacks, and the spear for hunting. And yeah, later on in the game you'll earn different versions of each weapon, like a fire arrow and a torch version of the club, but for the most part these three weapons are all you have. The variety in the combat comes from your new ability to tame animals. At the beginning of the game you're given the ability to call in an owl and act as your scout, or a prehistoric drone if you will. With the owl you're able to mark down enemies ahead of you to plan out attacks. You can also use bait to tame other prehistoric wildlife such as a saber-toothed tiger. In combat situations, you can use these animals to attack other enemies or wildlife for hunting, such as a giant woolly mammoth. Being able to call in a saber-toothed tiger or a jaguar to attack a tribe while I individually shoot down other enemies with my bow and arrow is so much fun, at least for the first few minutes. While all these new features are fun, they start to wear out after a few hours as your lack of weapon variety becomes repetitive just a few hours into the 20-hour campaign. Those are the main changes in Far Cry Primal from the rest of the story, but when you boil down to it, most of the Far Cry gameplay system is still here, just in the new setting. You still have a skill tree that you use to unlock new abilities as you level up. Each person of the secondary cast represents a section of your skills. For example, Sayla represents your gathering skills and Tensei represents your beast taming skills. The crafting system and open world also return in Far Cry Primal. We'll have to go hunting and gather resources to create bows, clubs, and even bait to tame the wildlife. The open world works just like any other Far Cry game. You have outposts from enemy tribes that you can capture to set fast travel points to. The map is covered in plants and animals for you to hunt and gather to go ahead and build up your inventory of weapons and resources. Music and sound in the game are great, with sound effects fitting every situation. The ambient sound of the forest as you stalk some deer on your hunt is beautiful. The crack sound of you swinging a club at an enemy then skinning an animal, albeit disturbing at times, is oddly satisfying. Visuals on the other hand are slightly mixed. There's a lot of attention to detail with the cast of characters. Everything from their clothing to their character models and facial expressions are top notch. Where things really take a hit are the visual effects. Standing still for a moment to take in the sights, you'll see things like flames from your torch and the splashing drops of water from a waterfall. Well, they really look cheap. It's really sad to see, as the setting of this game is the real eye-catcher going for it, so having mediocre visual effects is slightly disappointing. For those of you that are fans of Far Cry 3 or 4, sadly there's no multiplayer mode in this game. There's no co-op, there's no online multiplayer, it's strictly just a single-player campaign. Overall, Far Cry Primal is a fun game, but also very limited. When just about every aspect of your game is based on the setting and location, then you truly are taking a gamble on creating a brand new experience. And for that I applaud Ubisoft. With that said, the new environment is fantastic to explore, but also limits a lot of the gameplay in Far Cry Primal. Sure, it's not logical to complain that there aren't any guns in this game, as they don't exist in this time setting, but some sort of replacement should have been offered. Taming different beasts to act on your side is pretty much the replacement that Ubisoft made for the lack of weapons, but with that said, I don't think it adds enough variety to the game. Sure, it's really fun, but it doesn't completely replace what was there once. If you want to pick a Far Cry Primal, I'd recommend waiting to get it on sale for $40, It definitely is a fun game, but very limited at times with the gameplay. Thank you all very much for watching this review. I hope you guys found it useful and enjoyable. If you did, be sure to smash that like button and share with your friends on your favorite social networks, as it does really help the channel grow. In the comments below, let me know what you guys think about the game if you're playing it right now, or your first impressions of it just from the trailer if you haven't picked it up just yet. Thank you all once again very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Later.